At 41, Jill Briceno was in what should have been the prime of her life. A devoted wife to her husband Carlos, a mother with a daughter, and the secretary who kept a small private school running like clockwork. She had everything, except the ability to forget what she'd watched happen to her father. For 20 years, Jill had tried not to think about it. The way her father's handwriting had gotten sloppy, the involuntary movements, the slow, relentless progression that Huntington's disease carved through his brain and his life. She pushed the possibility of her own genetic fate into a locked corner of her mind, until the symptoms started. First came the rapid eye movements, then the minor twitching in her toes, what doctors called chorea, the involuntary dance-like movements that give the disease away. When she finally asked Carlos directly if he had noticed anything, he had to confirm what they both feared. As Carlos later said, what Jill had tried not to think about for 20 years, what we had hoped we would never experience, became cold, hard truth. My dear, beautiful, brilliant, loving, patient, insightful, and hilarious wife had tested positive for Huntington's. The blood test confirmed it. 42 CAG repeats, just like her father. But here's where Jill's story diverges from her father's generation. 2 weeks after her diagnosis, she told Carlos something that stunned him. I accept this. Not resignation, acceptance. Because unlike her father, Jill had something he never did. Genuine hope, backed by science. Welcome to Apprentice.io's Industry Insights. I'm Frank Maggiore, and today we're diving into a medical breakthrough that's rewriting the playbook for one of genetics' cruelest diseases. We're talking about Unicure's AMT-130, a gene therapy that just posted results so remarkable, they're forcing us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about treating neurodegenerative diseases. Last month, September 2025, the data dropped showing an astonishing 75% slowing of disease progression. Not symptom management, not temporary relief. Now, I want to put this in perspective. This was a small study of only 29 patients, with only 17 patients in the high-dose group, where most of the benefits were observed. And that this is just the phase 1-2 readout. Additional phase 3 testing among a wider, more diverse patient population will still be required to validate these results. That's how science and the clinical trial process works. But we're beginning to show actual, measurable biological slowing of the disease itself. And for someone like Jill, diagnosed at age 41, this could mean the difference between losing her independence in her 50s versus living to see a daughter and potentially a daughter's children grow up. As Jill herself puts it about her care team at Northwestern Medicine's Huntington's Disease Center of Excellence, everyone, the entire team, seems to be there, like it's their goal to find a cure too. You can feel that they want that for you. And that cure might be closer than anyone imagined. This isn't just a story about one drug or one disease. This is about the resurrection of an entire industry that nearly collapsed under the weight of safety concerns, multi-million-dollar price tags, and high-profile failures. It's about 41,000 Americans living with Huntington's and over 200,000 more carrying a genetic time bomb, each one playing a 50-50 game of Russian roulette with every child that they bring into the world. And here's the kicker. This breakthrough is happening at the exact moment when the tools to scale it up, to bring it from bench to bedside to patients like Jill, are finally ready. We're talking about cloud-based manufacturing execution systems, AI-driven optimization, and digital twins that can simulate entire production runs before a single drop of material is wasted. So buckle up as we explore how a tiny strand of artificial RNA might just be the key to giving Jill and thousands like her the future they thought Huntington's had stolen from them. Let me paint you a picture of what Huntington's disease actually is, because understanding the enemy is the first step to appreciating just how remarkable this breakthrough is. Imagine your DNA as a massive instruction manual, 3 billion letters long. Now, buried in chromosome 4, there's a gene called Huntington. In healthy people, this gene has a section that repeats the letters CAG about 10 to 35 times. Think of it as a genetic stutter. CAG, CAG, CAG. Totally normal, totally fine. But in Huntington's patients, that stutter becomes a scream. The CAG sequence repeats 40, 50, and sometimes over 100 times. And here's where it gets diabolical. The more repeats you have, the earlier the disease hits and the faster it progresses. It's like your DNA is running a malicious code that slowly corrupts your entire operating system. This corrupted gene produces a toxic version of the Huntington protein. Picture it as a molecular wrecking ball that specifically targets your brain's motor control center, the striatum. The neurons there start dying off one by one, year after year. It's not quick. Oh no, that would be merciful. Huntington's disease is a slow motion catastrophe that typically takes 10 to 25 years to run its course. And here's the truly cruel part. Symptoms usually show up between the ages of 30 and 50. Think about that timing for a second. You've established your career, you're raising your kids, you're in the prime of your life, and suddenly you notice your handwriting is starting to get sloppy. Maybe you're dropping things more often. Your spouse mentions you seem a little bit more irritable lately. These early symptoms are so subtle, it's easy to dismiss them as stress or normal aging. But then comes the chorea, those involuntary dance-like movements that gave the disease its original name, Huntington's chorea. Your body starts moving without your permission. Your speech begins to slur. Your ability to plan, to reason, to remember, it all starts slipping away. One patient described it as watching yourself disappear in slow motion while being fully aware it's happening. Can you imagine anything more terrifying than that? But wait, there's more cruel irony. Remember that 50-50 inheritance pattern I mentioned? It's what geneticists call an autosomal dominant gene. You only need one bad copy of the gene from one parent to get the disease. No carriers, no skipping generations. If your parent has it, you flip a coin. Heads, you're fine. Tails, you're facing the same fate. You watch destroy them. And because symptoms don't show up until midlife, many people already have had their kids before they know that they are affected. The disease perpetuates itself through generations like some kind of biological curse. Entire family trees decimated, branch by branch. Current treatments, they're about as effective as putting a band-aid on a severed artery. We have drugs like tetrabenazine that can reduce the chorea movements, antidepressants for mood symptoms, antipsychotics for behavioral issues. But these are all symptomatic treatments. They might make the journey slightly more comfortable, but they don't change the destination. The brain keeps degenerating, the neurons keep dying, and the clock, it keeps on ticking. Until now, until AMT 130, until someone figured out how to hack the genetic code itself. Alright, let's get into the science, and I promise to keep this more cool documentary than boring textbook. So how do you stop a genetic disease that's literally written into every cell of your body? You can't just change the DNA itself. Well, not yet anyway. CRISPR is working on that, but we're not just there yet. Instead, Uniqure did something brilliantly sneaky. They created a molecular interceptor. Here's the deal. Your DNA is like the master blueprint, locked in a vault. When your cell needs to make a protein, it doesn't use the original blueprint. It makes a photocopy. That's messenger RNA, or mRNA. The corrupted Huntington gene makes corrupted mRNA, which then makes the toxic protein. AMT 130 introduces artificial microRNA. Think of it as a molecular assassin, specifically trained to recognize and destroy Huntington mRNA. No mRNA, no toxic protein. No toxic protein, no brain damage. It's like installing a spam filter that catches malicious code before it can execute. But here's the first challenge. How do you get this artificial microRNA into brain cells? You can't just inject it into the bloodstream. The blood-brain barrier would block it faster than a bouncer at an exclusive nightclub. You can't just take it as a pill. Your stomach acid would destroy it. This is where it gets really clever. Uniqure hijacked a virus. Specifically, they used AAV5, adeno-associated virus serotype 5. Now, before you start panicking about viruses, AAV is basically nature's perfect microscopic delivery vehicle. It's like the UPS truck of the virus world. All delivery, no damage. They gutted this virus, removed all its own genetic material, and packed it with the instructions for making Huntington silencing microRNA. It's like taking a tank, removing all the weapons, and converting it into an armored ambulance. But even with your molecular ambulance ready, you still need to get it to the right address. This isn't something you can just inject into an arm. This procedure requires a difficult MRI-guided stereotactic neurosurgery. Basically, surgeons use real-time brain imaging to guide a needle directly into the striatum, which is ground zero for Huntington's damage. They inject the viral vectors right where they're needed the most. Once inside the brain cells, the AAV5 vectors do their thing. They deliver their genetic payload, and the cells start producing the artificial microRNA. Here's the beautiful part. This is a one and done treatment. Once those cells start making the microRNA, they keep making it forever. It's like installing a permanent antivirus program for your brain. Now, why did AMT-130 succeed where others failed? Remember that big failure in 2021 when Roche and Ionis had to stop their antisense oligonucleotide trial. That drug, tominersen, was trying to do something similar, silence Huntington. But there were crucial differences. First, antisense oligonucleotides need to be repeatedly injected into the spinal fluid. That's invasive, uncomfortable, and you need to keep doing it forever. Second, they dilute in the cerebral spinal fluid and get broken down by enzymes. It's like trying to stop a flood with a bucket that has holes in it. AMT-130's microRNA approach is fundamentally different. Once it's integrated, it's part of your cellular machinery. It's not floating around waiting to be degraded. It's actively produced by your own cells. It's the difference between renting and owning, between treatment and transformation. And the specificity? Oh, the specificity is gorgeous. The microRNA is designed to target both mutant and normal Huntington RNA, which sounds bad until you realize that a partial reduction in normal Huntington is well tolerated, while completely eliminating the toxic version is life-saving. It's like turning down the volume on your entire stereo system to eliminate feedback. You lose a little of the good signal, but you eliminate the ear-splitting shriek. Let's talk about what a 75% slowing of disease progression actually means, because percentages can feel abstract until you translate them into human terms. Imagine you're diagnosed with Huntington's at age 40. Without treatment, by age 50, you'll likely be struggling with significant motor symptoms, cognitive decline, and maybe unable to work. By 55, you might need full-time care. And by 60 to 65, well, most patients don't make it that far. Now, slow that timeline down by 75%. That decade of decline, it now takes 20, 30, or even 40 years. That means our 40-year-old patient might not need full-time care until they're 80. They could see their kids graduate college, get married, have children of their own. They could have a career, a retirement, a life that resembles something close to normal aging rather than accelerated neurodegeneration. This isn't just life extension, it's life preservation. There's a massive difference between living longer and living longer well. AMT-130 offers the latter. The clinical trial data is remarkable. In the high-dose group, patients showed a mean change in the composite unified Huntington's disease rating scale, that CUHDRS, for those keeping score, of negative 0.38 over 3 years. The match control group, negative 1.52. Now, those might sound like small numbers, but in the world of neurodegeneration, they're seismic. Every point on that scale represents real functional capacity, the ability to work, to manage finances, to maintain relationships, to live independently. And here's something crucial. They saw an 8.2% reduction in cerebral spinal fluid neurofilament light chain. That's science speak for the biomarker that tells us neurons are dying. When that number goes down, it means treatment isn't just masking symptoms, it's actually protecting brain cells. The FDA certainly took notice. They granted AMT-130 breakthrough therapy designation in April 2025, fast-tracking its path to approval. The biological license application is planned for Q1 2026, with potential approval and launch later that year. We're not talking about some distant future here where clinical trials will take decades. We're talking about as early as next year. But perhaps the most game-changing aspect is the shift in treatment philosophy. For decades, neurodegenerative diseases have been managed, not modified. We've accepted decline as inevitable and focused on comfort. AMT-130 represents a fundamental paradigm shift from palliative to preventive, from managing decline to modifying disease trajectory. And unlike some gene therapies that only work in specific genetic subtypes or early disease stages, AMT-130 showed benefits across a range of patients. While the trials focused on early stage patients, the mechanism suggests potential benefit even for pre-symptomatic carriers. Imagine being able to treat Huntington's before the first symptoms appear, like taking statins to prevent heart disease rather than waiting for the first heart attack. Now here's where my biotech nerd heart really starts racing, because having a breakthrough therapy is only half the battle. The other half is making it at scale, with perfect consistency at a price that doesn't bankrupt the healthcare system. And that's where cloud-based manufacturing execution systems like our Tempo Manufacturing Cloud come into play. Let me break down why manufacturing AMT-130 is like trying to assemble a Swiss watch while riding a roller coaster. First, you're growing modified viruses in living cells. These aren't chemicals that you can mix in a beaker. They're biological entities with their own quirks and requirements. Temperature off by half a degree, batch ruin. pH slightly wrong, batch ruin. Contamination so small, you need an electron microscope to see it? You guessed it, batch ruin. The production process involves multiple steps: cell culture, transfection with viral DNA, virus production, purification, formulation, fill and finish. Each step has dozens of critical parameters that must be precisely controlled and documented. We're talking about tracking millions of data points per batch. Now imagine doing this across multiple manufacturing sites globally, because you can't make all the world's supply in one facility. You need redundancy, regional distribution, risk mitigation. How do you ensure that a batch made in New Jersey is identical to the one made in Amsterdam or Tokyo? This is where cloud-based manufacturing execution systems become absolutely critical. With Tempo, you're not just digitizing paper batch records. Every parameter, every measurement, every decision is captured in real time and accessible from anywhere. The platform's no-code integration is crucial for gene therapy production. You got bioreactors, chromatography systems, fill-finish equipment, all from different vendors, all speaking different digital languages. Tempo acts as a universal translator, pulling data from every piece of equipment into a single coherent record. And here's something people don't realize. For a therapy like AMT-130, the batch record isn't just documentation, it's part of the product itself. Regulators want to see every single parameter for every single dose. With Tempo, that's not a months-long archaeology expedition through paper records. It's just a few clicks away. But the real game changer, the ability to learn and optimize in real time. Each batch teaches the system something new. The AI identifies patterns that humans would miss. Maybe yields are 3% higher when you harvest at hour 71.5 instead of hour 72. Maybe contamination risk drops 40% if you adjust airflow patterns during transfer. These micro-optimizations compound over time, driving down costs and improving quality. Cost is critical here. Early gene therapies priced at $2 to $3 million per dose aren't sustainable, no matter how effective that they are. But with intelligent manufacturing systems, we can drive those costs down dramatically. Reduce failed batches by 50%, improve yields by 30%, cut release testing time by 60%. Suddenly, that multi-million-dollar therapy might just cost a few $100,000. Still expensive, but well within the reach of more healthcare systems. And speaking of release testing, with Tempo's real-time monitoring and built-in quality systems, you can implement release by exception. Instead of testing every parameter after the fact, the system continuously validates that you're within specifications. If everything stays within spec, the batch is essentially pre-validated. That can cut weeks off the release timeline. For a therapy targeting a disease like Huntington's, where every day of delay means irreversible neuronal loss, those weeks matter. They're the difference between treatment and tragedy. The AMT-130 success story is remarkable, but it's not happening in isolation. We're witnessing a broader resurrection of the gene therapy field, and it's happening right now in real time. Let's start with the elephant, or should I say bluebird, in the room. Bluebird Bio, once valued at $10 billion, nearly collapsed. They were sold for less than $30 million to private equity firms. But here's the plot twist. They've reemerged as Genetics Biotherapeutics, returning to their original 1992 name like some kind of corporate phoenix. New leadership, new capital, and most importantly, new strategies. They're not trying to boil the ocean anymore. They're focusing on their 3 approved gene therapies. Lyfgenia for sickle cell, Zynteglo for beta thalassemia, and Skysona for cerebral adrenoleukodystrophy. They're implementing cryopreservation for patient stem cells, expanding manufacturing capacity, and critically, working on making these therapies actually accessible to patients who need them. And then there's the Sarepta saga, which reads like a cautionary tale with important lessons. Their Duchenne muscular dystrophy gene therapy, Elvidis, led to 3 patient deaths from acute liver failure in 2025. The FDA initially asked them to halt shipments. There was corporate drama, shareholder panic, the works. Stock price dropped 85% year to date. But here's what's interesting. The deaths only occurred in non-ambulatory patients. Patients who cannot walk on their own and require assistance, or who are bedridden, who received higher doses. Ambulatory patients, 0 deaths out of over 760 treated. The therapy is still being prescribed, just with much more careful patient selection and monitoring. It's a reminder that these aren't magic bullets. They're powerful interventions that require precision and respect. The broader RNA interference field is exploding. We now have over 30 clinical trials using siRNA or miRNA approaches. The FDA has approved 6 siRNA drugs already, including treatments for hereditary transthyretin amyloidosis, primary hyperoxaluria, and hypercholesterolemia. Each approval makes the next one easier. Regulators are getting comfortable with the technology. Manufacturing processes are being standardized, and safety profiles are being established. And then there's the AI revolution that's supercharging everything. Machine learning models can now predict which RNA sequences will be most effective with remarkable accuracy. What used to take years of trial and error can now be done within weeks of computational modeling. Companies are using AI to identify off-target effects before they ever synthesize a molecule. They're predicting immune responses, optimizing delivery vehicles, even designing entirely new types of RNA therapeutics that wouldn't have been possible to conceptualize without computational assistance. The patent landscape is particularly interesting. There's been a 40% increase in RNA therapeutic patents filed in 2024 to 2025 compared to the previous 2 years. Big Pharma is paying attention. Roche, despite their Tomidocin failure, is pushing forward with new RNA programs. Pfizer, flush with COVID vaccine profits, is investing heavily in RNA therapeutics. Even tech companies are getting involved. Google's DeepMind is working on RNA structure prediction. Investment is returning too. After the gene therapy winter of 2023 to 2024, venture capital is flowing back. Q1 2025 saw $2.3 billion being invested in cell and gene therapy companies, up 50% from the same period last year. The smart money is betting that AMT-130 success is just the beginning. But perhaps the most important breakthrough is in the regulatory landscape. The FDA has introduced new guidance for gene therapy manufacturing, streamlined approval pathways while maintaining safety standards. The European Medicines Agency is harmonizing requirements across member states. Japan is offering accelerated approval for regenerative medicines. The regulatory infrastructure is finally catching up to the science. All right, let's peer into the future. And I'm not talking about vague hand waving. I'm talking about concrete developments we can see coming based on current trajectories. First, the near term, 2026 to 2028. AMT-130 will likely be approved and launched in 2026. But that's just the start. Uniqure is already planning trials in pre-symptomatic patients. Imagine identifying Huntington's carriers through genetic testing and treating them before neurons begin dying. It's like putting out a fire before it starts rather than after your house is already half burned. The platform technology will expand rapidly. AMT-130 uses the same basic approach, AAV delivery of microRNA, that could work for other polyglutamine diseases, spinocerebellar ataxia, Kennedy's disease, dentatorubral pallidoluysian atrophy. These are all caused by similar CAG repeat expansions. The same gun, different bullets. We could see trials for these conditions starting within 18 to 24 months. By 2028, I predict we'll see combination approaches. AMT-130 plus neuroprotective small molecules, gene silencing plus protein degradation enhancers. It's like treating cancer. A single agent is good, but combination therapies are much better. Medium term, 2028 to 2032, things get really interesting. Second generation RNA therapies will emerge with improved delivery systems, maybe AAV vectors that can cross the blood-brain barrier, eliminating the need for complex brain surgeries, or synthetic lipid nanoparticles that are even more efficient than viral vectors. We'll see the first pediatric applications. This is ethically complex, but scientifically compelling. If you know a child carries the Huntington's mutation, why wait for the symptoms? Early intervention could prevent the disease entirely, rather than just slowing it down. Manufacturing will be revolutionized. Fully automated production facilities with AI-driven optimization will drive costs down by 90%. I'm talking about gene therapies that cost a few $100,000 instead of multiple millions. Still not cheap, but well within the range of many expensive chronic treatments. Insurance models will adapt. We're already seeing it with the existing gene therapies. outcome-based pricing, annuity payments, risk-sharing agreements. By 2030, there will be standardized frameworks for covering these one-time curative treatments. Long-term, 2032 and beyond, we're entering science fiction territory that's actually science fact. CRISPR-based therapies that don't just silence the bad gene, but actually fix it. Prime editing that can insert, delete, or replace DNA sequences with surgical precision. Base editing that can change single letters in the genetic code. The platform approach will extend to the big three neurodegenerative diseases: Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and ALS. These are more complex than Huntington's because they're not single gene disorders, but RNA therapeutics can target multiple pathways simultaneously. Imagine a cocktail of microRNAs that address tau, amyloid, and inflammation in Alzheimer's. That's not crazy. It's already in preclinical development. We'll see preventative genetic medicine becoming routine. Annual genetic screening, risk stratification, and prophylactic treatment for those at highest risk. It'll be like how we manage cardiovascular disease today, but for genetic conditions. Manufacturing will be distributed and potentially even personalized. Imagine desktop-sized bioreactors that can produce gene therapies on demand in hospitals, or cell therapies manufactured from your own cells while you wait. The infrastructure being built today, the cloud-based manufacturing execution systems, the AI optimization, the digital twins, that's the foundation for this distributed future. My hope is by 2040, Huntington's disease will be a prevented disease, not a treated one. Children born with the mutation will receive interventions as children and grow up never having to worry about it, foregoing a lifetime of existential dread for you and your family. You know, when I started in science more than 30 years ago, Huntington's disease was the poster child for genetic inevitability. If you had a mutation, your fate was sealed. Period. End of story. Doctors could tell you what would happen, when it would happen, and roughly how long it would take. They could help alleviate some of the symptoms, but they just couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. Today, we're talking about a therapy that slows disease progression by 75%. 3/4. That's not incremental improvement, that's transformational change. That's the difference between watching your kids grow up and missing it, between having a career and losing it, between being a grandparent and becoming a memory. For the 41,000 Americans living with Huntington's disease right now, AMT-130 represents something that didn't exist before. Hope with data behind it. Not wishful thinking, not maybe someday, but concrete, statistical, peer-reviewed hope. And for the over 200,000 people at risk, those who've watched parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles deteriorate, those who've lived their entire lives under the shadow of a genetic coin flip. This changes everything. That sword of Damocles hanging over their heads just got a lot less sharp. But here's what really excites me. Huntington's disease is just the beginning. The success of AMT-130 validates the entire approach of using RNA interference for neurodegenerative diseases. Those 7,000 rare genetic diseases affecting approximately 400 million people globally. Many of them now are tractable. Not easy, not simple, but possible. The gene therapy industry, which nearly imploded after the Bluebird bio collapse, is rising from the ashes stronger and smarter. We've learned from the failures. We know that patient selection matters, that dose matters, that delivery matters. We're not cowboys anymore, we're precision engineers. And critically, we now have the infrastructure to scale these miracles. Cloud-based manufacturing execution systems like Tempo aren't just nice to haves, they're essential. They're the difference between making 100 doses and 100,000. Between treatments that cost millions and treatments that cost tens of thousands. Between therapies that take years to produce and ones that are available when patients need them the most. So here's my call to action. First, if you have a family history of Huntington's or any genetic disease, get genetic counseling. Knowledge is power, and with therapies like AMT-130 on the near-term horizon, that knowledge could save your life or the life of your children. Second, support organizations like the Huntington's Disease Society of America, CHDI Foundation, and the Hereditary Disease Foundation. They've been fighting this fight for decades, funding the research that helped make AMT-130 possible. Third, advocate for insurance coverage for genetic therapies. These treatments only work if patients can access them. Call your representative, support legislation that ensures coverage for rare disease treatments, and push for outcome-based pricing models that make these therapies sustainable. And finally, for those of you in biotech, in manufacturing, in healthcare, recognize that we're at an inflection point. The tools are here, the science is here, the regulatory framework is emerging. What we need now is the will to scale, to industrialize hope, to turn scientific miracles into standard medical practice. Today, we stand at a turning point where genetic destiny is no longer written in stone. The question isn't whether we can treat genetic diseases, but how quickly can we scale these miracles to reach everyone who needs them. AMT-130 isn't just a drug. It's proof that we can reach into the very core of our biology and rewrite the rules. It's evidence that the manufacturing platforms we're building today will be the highways on which tomorrow's cures travel. It's validation that sometimes, just sometimes, science can deliver on its biggest promises. In the race against genetic disease, every day of progress means countless tomorrows restored. Every advance in manufacturing efficiency means another patient gets treated. Every breakthrough means another family spared from watching their loved ones disappear. Think about Jill Briceno for a moment. A year ago, she received a diagnosis that her father's generation considered a death sentence. Today, she's enrolled at Northwestern's Huntington Disease Center of Excellence, part of a medical revolution that's happening in real time. She watched her father face this disease with no options except symptom management. Her daughter might watch her mother become one of the first generation to actually beat the genetic clock. When Jill said, "I accept this," 2 weeks after her diagnosis, it wasn't giving up. It was recognizing that her fight would be different from her father's. She had the tools that he never did, hope he could never access. And now, with AMT-130 showing a 75% slowing of progression, that hope has data behind it. The future of medicine isn't just about discovering new treatments. It's about building the systems to deliver them. And that future, it's not coming someday. It's here, it's now, and it's absolutely incredible. In an industry where precision and compliance are paramount, Apprentice's Tempo platform offers a cutting-edge manufacturing execution system solution. It's cloud-based, mobile-first, operator-centric, with the most intuitive UI in the industry, making it perfect for today's dynamic pharmaceutical manufacturing environments and for the production of the world's most complex drug products. Whether you're working on groundbreaking cell and gene therapies, biologics, or small molecules, Tempo provides a fully validated MES system that's both powerful and easy to use. It streamlines your processes, ensures compliance, and adapts to your specific manufacturing needs. So get off of paper batch records and discover how Apprentice's Tempo Manufacturing Cloud can transform your operations by visiting us at apprentice.io. Attention industry professionals, revolutionize your manufacturing process with the Apprentice Tempo Manufacturing Cloud, a manufacturing execution system built to streamline your operations, boost efficiency, and ensure compliance all in one powerful platform. Experience the future of manufacturing with our free 30-day trial. Scan the QR code on your screen now to unlock a world of innovation. Don't just keep pace, set the tempo as an industry leader with Apprentice. That's all for Apprentice.io's Industry Insights. I'm Frank Maggiore. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for notifications when new episodes drop. Please comment on if you have any additional topics you would like for me to cover in this space, and we'll see you next week for more Industry Insights.